Welcome to another edition of Spits and Suds. I'm Gavin Spittle of 1053 The Fan. We kind of have a doubleheader for you today. We just spoke with Connor Hrabchek and got the Winnipeg side of things, and we get the latest from the Dallas Stars from what many are saying is the best guy to cover Dallas Stars hockey from starsthoughts.com. You hear him all the time on Spits and Suds. One of the reasons this podcast is successful is because of people like Robert Tiffin. How are you, my friend?
I'm pretty good, Gavin. What many people are saying, it sounds like my parents were in town recently.
You know,
that's great.
Connor said I was he goes, you continue to like be my hype man and change the ways. I referred to him as, because Connor's like in his early 20s and he's just a machine as far as hockey. And so I said, you ever go to a bar and you see a band and the band's like, wow, that band's really good. And the next thing you know, you're like, I swear I saw that band. And that's going to be Connor Hrabchek up in Winnipeg. So same thing, Robert Tiffin. You're seeing him right now, and now all of a sudden he's starting to play the bigger venues, and pretty soon, AAC, baby.
Man, we'll see. When I was taking piano lessons as a 12-year-old, that was always the dream, right? You somehow become a rock star. So I guess if this is that equivalent, then I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you just came from practice. Why don't you give us the latest? Lot of news swirling regarding Jason Robertson, as well as the Stars kind of changed things up today as far as the lines.
Yeah, the Stars had an optional practice yesterday, so it's hard to kind of see exactly, not much to be gleaned from that in terms of process other than just seeing some players working out. But today they had a full practice, full lines and everything like that. And they changed basically everything except the top line as far as the forwards. Miro Heiskanen, I should say right off the bat, he was there at practice. He did some drills and everything like that. Looked like he was a full participant in the drill parts that weren't like really involving a full pairing, but he wasn't in the top six defense pairs. So based on that and based on some things DeBoer said later, I wouldn't expect Miro Heiskanen to be just to get it up front. That's the question everyone's asking.
Sure.
I don't think my sense is, of course, DeBoer isn't going to confirm that until game time tomorrow. But I don't think Miro Heiskanen will be necessarily in the starting lineup for game one, but he's still very close. Okay, Jason Robertson. So at practice, the first thing we notice is that Jamie Benn comes out wearing a green practice jersey, which is the second line. That's what Duchesne, Sagan, and Marchment have been wearing. And then Marchment comes out wearing a gray jersey, which is the third line usually, and that's what Benn has been wearing. So Jamie Benn was playing on the line, the left wing, with Duchesne and Sagan. So Jamie Benn and Tyler Sagan reunited with Matt Duchesne. So I guess that's the 30-somethings line. Maybe that's the dad bod line. Whatever
where's
you want to call
Rads
it.
when you need him, right? Bring Rads back and complete that line.
Yeah. I'll have to maybe. Well, they're all headed to Winnipeg now, but there's got to be some good nickname possibilities for that line.
Yeah,
They are all fathers now that Jamie's had a baby too. So
it's true.
There's some possibilities there. But the bigger news is probably that Jason Robertson was skating on a line looking for all the world like a full participant on a forward line. And he was skating not on the left wing, but on the right wing, even though he's a left shot, of Wyatt Johnston. So Mason Marchment was the third line left wing, Johnston was center, and then Jason Robertson was the third line right wing on his offhand side. And then Beck, Steele, and Dodonov was on the right wing, also on his offhand side, which he usually plays on the fourth line. So we asked Pete DeBoer afterwards about lines and chemistry and things. He said, first, he just kind of volunteered when talking about line combos and depth and injuries. He said he was talking to Colin Blackwell, and DeBoer said, Blackwell will probably be out for game one, but, we don't win one of those games without Colin Blackwell. And, basically just saying it was an encouraging conversation for Blackwell, saying, hey, we have this depth. You won't be dressed every game, but you're a big part of the team. So that already is a pretty strong indicator, along with the lines we saw today, that Blackwell is coming out of the lineup, and that Robertson going in today, like we saw at practice, is pretty good. The second thing DeBoer said about that was, when asked directly about Jason Robertson playing, he said, he's close. He's really close. We'll see tomorrow. He's close, but we'll have to see how he feels tomorrow. But for all the world, I'm thinking that's, if you want me to place a bet, I would bet on Jason Robertson being in the starting lineup tomorrow for game one in Winnipeg. That is kind of where I'm leaning based on DeBoer's comments.
I have asked Sean about this, Sean Shapiro, who joins us weekly. But I wanted to ask you, how much do you put into practice lines? And the second is one of the things that, well, everyone knows on this podcast, I'm a Blackwell guy, but him coming out of the lineup, which I understand, my only concern is that Winnipeg power play, which was so effective during the regular season, and now you're taking one of your big penalty killers out.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is Oscar Beck stepping up on the penalty kill. I think has really, in some ways, and he has a little bit more size and reach too, which I think DeBoer really likes on that penalty kill, especially the way Stars kill penalties. Those top forwards really can use that big reach with some of kind of the sweeping moves those forwards make in their really aggressive play, because they're okay getting outnumbered down low in the penalty kill. They just want their top two guys and even sometimes a defenseman to kind of jet out and really avoid those more dangerous passes with time and space up high. So I think because early in the season we saw it was Steele and Blackwell were the top penalty killing pair most of the year, anytime Blackwell was dressed. But I think I think Oscar Beck has a little bit supplanted him from that Colorado series as the top pairing with Steele. And top isn't necessarily the right word, because the real top penalty kill forward pairing is Wyatt Johnston and Rope Hintz. But DeBoer has said before he kind of likes to put them out second on the penalty kill, because they have a better chance of being out there as the power players start to get a little tired, and then they have a better opportunity for a counter rush and counter attack. And obviously Johnson and Hintz are capable of that. So that's the consolation.
Yeah, I love it. I did like how Pete DeBoer made it a point to talk about Sam Steele kind of creating that screen, which gave Rantanen that space on the first goal on Saturday night. One of the many things I like about Pete DeBoer is he brings up those details that aren't necessarily on the score sheet, and I think that's good for fans, but also good for the players, knowing that coaches are recognizing their efforts.
Yeah, it's funny because earlier in the season, when Blackwell was scratched, I think I remember at least one conference and maybe two press conferences where one of us asked in the media, "Hey, Blackwell's out. Is he hurt?" And he said, "Nope, coach's decision," and that's it. Didn't really add anything to it. Just, this happens. Players lower in the lineup. This is the nature of having a deep team, and that's fine. But this time, DeBoer proactively mentioned Blackwell's going to be out, and we don't win that series without him, and all these things really, really made a point, like you said, to highlight Blackwell's contributions. And then he went on and did the same thing for kind of the second time in a few days. He did the same thing about the defense too, and just highlighted how excellent Petrovic and Bichel and everyone have been really throughout the defense and helping him get through that series.
Okay, I have so many questions to ask you. You just mentioned Petrovic, so I'm going to move that ahead. I've never seen this, and I keep talking about this, and I keep trying to think of an example of someone that's down in the minors, Robert, and then just comes up and plays valuable playoff minutes. I guess my question is, like, for instance, next year, why couldn't he be a part of the top six? Like, what is stopping regular season Petrovic at least being, even if it's a scratch defenseman, being on this roster?
This season, I think it was largely contracts, having Brendan Smith and Matt Dumba already up there with one-way contracts, just because you don't save cap space by sending those players down, or at least you don't save much, right? You could save some, but also you'd have to send them through waivers and all this stuff too. Anyway, it's so a little bit cap space,
that makes sense.
But mostly but actually, really, I shouldn't say cap space. I should say contracts. Those players were signed as NHL players, whereas Petrovic was signed with a deal that was pretty clearly an AHL type role, with the possibility to maybe play in the NHL as needed. And assigning a free agent to a multi-year contract like Dumba and then trying to pass him through waivers to send him down earlier in the season would have just been foolish, because the Stars ended up needing him, especially later in the season when their defensive depth was tested so severely. They needed Dumba, and he was really stable on that bottom pairing with Bichel for the last part of the season. But I don't know. Joel Hanley is the obvious comparison, but he wasn't even in the AHL that much.
Right.
It was more just a guy who was scratched a lot, and then surprise, you're the number one guy.
Yeah. And had a great year for Calgary too.
He did. I think in 2019, if I'm remembering correctly, when was it? I think it was 2019, because Julius Honka was basically passed over repeatedly after having a shot earlier in the season when Klingberg got hurt, and then kind of showing he wasn't really ready to be a trusted NHL defenseman. So even players like Ben Gleason were getting looks and stuff.
Yes.
Everyone was getting hurt in defense that year. And then the playoffs, I think Joel Hanley, Taylor Fadoon, but also Dylan Hetherington came out of nowhere to play a playoff game or two on the blue line. So it has happened before, but usually it's been because, a lot of people have been hurt or something. This is a case of a coach just pretty much saying, yeah, okay, we'll bring this guy back from last year and just do a reunion tour for the spring again.
Right. So when we talked to Connor up in Winnipeg, I asked him, I know there are rules regarding no celebrating in the press box. However, when Winnipeg scored against St. Louis, what happened? And he said, let's just say we bent the rules a little bit and weren't really being enforced. Makes sense. Game 7s haven't happened in Winnipeg. That's a massive win for this organization who has struggled in the playoffs. So let's go back to Saturday night and Robert Tiffin. Was there like a running high five with Leah Simakopoulos, or was there like a fist pump underneath the desk? This is why I sit in the stands. Like, people are like, how come you're not in the press box? I just need to feel that emotion. I totally get, and I probably should be in the press box, but for some reason, I just feel it. And I guess the question was, were the rules bent in any way on Saturday night, Mr. Tiffin?
It's pretty, in the playoffs especially, the press box is packed pretty full. So I think that's helpful for a lot of people to just kind of reinforce that professionalism. Leah is a pro's pro. She's not going to be doing anything like that, I should say. I think if I recall my reaction when Rantanen scored, I think the second goal is I just turned and just kind of a little bit of an open mouth, just wow, like to the person sitting next to me. And that was about it. Not just because it's been kind of trained out of you so much not to do that in the press box. But I couldn't resist at least kind of that look and your eyes going wide and just going, wow.
Yeah.
That just, what can you say? That moment, that game, it was, it's one of those, if you were there or if you watched it, you will remember that one for a long time. It's like Game 6 against the Sharks in 2008, right? With Cinco de Mayo.
Absolutely.
Like, that's a game. It wasn't a Stanley Cup winning game. It wasn't even a conference winning game. It was a second round winner. This is a first round winning game, but it's one of those games that's special. The NHL playoffs the Stanley Cup playoffs are special.
It was the greatest game I've ever seen. Greatest game I've ever been to.
In person. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I was at Joe Pavelski's 4-goal game a couple years ago against Seattle. That was pretty wild, and that was a similar sort of delirious response of, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Of course, that didn't end. They lost it in overtime, but it was still one of those you couldn't believe it moments. But this game, just the situation, the context, the storyline of Rantanen against this. It's literally. I saw a player after the game as I was walking down a little bit late to join all the press conferences. And I saw another player walking out, and he just kind of looked at me and said, well, couldn't script it any better, huh? I said, yeah, that's about right. It's just one of those moments you can't.
Yeah.
What can you say? What can you say?
So, quick sidebar on 2008. The one thing I remember about that game, obviously the pass from Robida to Miro was terrific, but they had to replay twice, once with Evgeny Nabokov and once with Marty Turco. They had to determine if the puck went past the goal line in their glove because the shot was such a hard one-timer that the glove went back. I've never seen that since. It was absolutely two magnificent saves. Both goalies played out of their mind. It just truly was a special night, so I'm glad Saturday night was up there with you.
Yeah, I remember those. I think it was one of your podcast guests, Ralph Strangis, who I believe said of that Nabokov save, that might be the best save I've ever seen.
It was unreal.
Like, just no qualifiers, because you can see the puck perfectly in his glove as it goes back and basically pauses right at the goal line, but clearly doesn't go over on that one timer from I think it was Brad Richards, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
it was one of those just unbelievable games.
Yeah,
that game, there are a lot of moments from that game that live in my memory and will for a long time. But yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Okay, so Winnipeg's interesting because they have the same situation as Dallas. Great to see Robertson, maybe an insertion into the lineup.
Oh, yeah. I should have said this earlier about Robertson, sorry, and then I went on a tangent about Heiskanen. Yes, Robertson. The other thing DeBoer said when we asked about his return, it was actually kind of funny. DeBoer made a joke about the question was, is it easier for someone to return as a forward like Robertson than for someone to return as a defenseman like Heiskanen, just given the different workloads and the different, there's more skating, especially with Heiskanen's game. And DeBoer said two things. One, he said that that Heiskanen, they wouldn't plan to have him come back and play 26 minutes a night. They would want to have him come back in a reduced role, which I think DeBoer also said before the playoffs that it would be hard not to use him that much when he comes back. So that's one where I'll believe that they can moderate Heiskanen usage when I see it in the playoffs, sort of things. But the other thing he said, which was pretty funny, was he said, well, given how Robo skates and given how Heiskanen skates, yeah, it's probably easier for Robo to come back. So just given that there's less pressure and less stress on Robertson, since he's not exactly known for being fleet of foot as a skater. So, but that was kind of an oblique way, I think, of him confirming, along with the lines and everything we saw, of him confirming that, yeah, there's probably less risk in bringing Robertson back now. And again, that's another reason that I do feel pretty confident that Robertson is likely to return in game one, or at least probably to return before Miro does. Sorry, I cut you off a little bit, but I just wanted to touch on that to clarify Robertson.
I'm glad you did that. Yeah. This is all valuable information. Coaches, as fans, as hosts, we are quick to criticize. We are sometimes not as quick to celebrate or give their due. I mean, whatever it was in the past with Pete DeBoer, this team seems to be responding to him and the moves that he has made as far as the chess. Just to take out Colorado alone, to me, has been so impressive. It's one of those things where I think sometimes after games, people are like, Pete DeBoer needs to go. And I'm glad I'm not seeing that on social media, Robert, because I think when you look at the injuries throughout the year, when you look at that first round playoff, I'll call it a small upset over the Colorado Avalanche, who were, I think, the second favorite to win the Stanley Cup. Just a heck of a coaching job.
Yeah, I was actually talking to one of the coaches today for a piece I'm going to have up later this week on my site, and it's so funny. Back in the day, it used to be you'd have 2, maybe 3 coaches on the bench or whatever, and you have a lot of double duties. And now everything's so specialized. Everyone has had opinions about Steve Spott earlier in the year running the Stars power play, and after this series, I saw today right before we hopped on to record. The Colorado Avalanche have fired their, I think, Ray Bennett, if I'm not misremembering his name, their power play coach. They just fired him right after that series with Dallas, whereas Dallas's power play, Wyatt Johnston, right? That power play goal at the end won him the series.
Yeah.
They had 7 power play goals to Colorado's 3. So, it's good when coaches actually get the praise they deserve, because so often they get blame. They get blame that they don't.
And a lot of credit to Steve Spott as far as the power play being successful. One thing I've tried to point out is just the appearance of Mikko Rantanen on the ice has opened up possibilities on the power play. I mean, he's so good as far as stick handling. His passing ability has been unbelievable. I mean, he's the quarterback of that power play. When you were watching on Saturday night, the amount that the puck hit his stick when he was on the ice during the power play, I mean, he was the QB, no doubt.
You're exactly right. In fact, one of my buddies, Dmitry Filipovich, just posted a YouTube compilation he put together of Rantanen's contributions with the puck, even that didn't turn into goals, throughout the whole series. And it's like 8 or 9 minutes long.
Wow.
It is, when you really watch all of those things put together, it hits you even more strongly how good Rantanen was and how dangerous he was, and really how everything DeBoer and others were saying about him, being good early in the series, even if the points weren't coming, about how true that was, because he really, and especially when you give him time and space on the power play, like you said, he really knows how to use it. And, turns out there's a reason that this 100-point winger and this over a point per game playoff guy, it turns out those weren't just all made up numbers.
Yeah.
It turns out he is that good. And it turns out in the highest leverage situation, which is a power play, it turns out he knows what to do. And he's the one, right? He passed it down to Duchesne, who passed it to Johnson. So he got a secondary assist on that goal too. It's easy to forget.
I also like, with all the lines being juggled today, Pete DeBoer is keeping the Finn line intact.
He said, that's the other thing he said about the Lions today. He said that line he really liked after they put it together, and I can't remember if it was game 2 or game 3, something like that. But he said the other lines, the word he used was spotty. The other lines were spotty. So they're all changed, right? Dodonov's now in the 4th line instead of Blackwell. Marchman and Robertson are in the 3rd line with Johnston instead of Ben and Dodonov. And the second line has been up there with Duchesne. So he was pretty clear that the other lines weren't as consistent as he needed them to be. It will be interesting to see how long Robertson stays down there on the third line. If the Finn line doesn't get off to as hot a start as they finished the series on, it would not shock me at all to see Robertson swap with Granlund. It is an interesting thing. If these lines from practice today do end up looking like the lines in game one, Robertson's playing on the right wing, which I can't remember him ever playing. He might have in one of his first seasons, but obviously once he was with Hintz and Pavelski, he was stapled to that first line left wing spot. So it'll be interesting to see. That's a great, playing on your off wing like Rantanen does, or Radulov did back in the day, like you mentioned. That's a great spot for one-timers. It can, you're on your forehand, seeing a little bit more of the ice. So sometimes it can allow you to do more playmaking, which Robertson can also do. So it'll be interesting to see if that is indeed what they go with, and my hunch is it is, then maybe Robertson can really help with getting some more of those lines going, as opposed to just having one or two going, which was the case for a lot of the Colorado series.
We were all excited about the Pete DeBoer Game 7 success heading into Game 7. Has it been talked about after practice today about the Game 1 woes of this Stars team?
Yeah, he's been asked about it a few times. I think he's joked about it before. So he has a pretty good sense of humor about it. But and I think I remember even a couple weeks ago, maybe he said, well, yeah, it's nice to have that Game 7 record, but I'd much prefer not to have to get to a Game 7 to add to that record. I'd like a few more Game 6 wins, so I don't have to have that Game 7 record. But you just have to give him a lot of credit for it, because not all of those have been pristine wins where it's clear that his team is dominating the other team. Dallas and Colorado being a pretty obvious example of that, where they needed one player DeBoer said it, right, and put the team on his back and basically won that game for him. It was that simple. But how much credit does the coach get for that? I don't know. Should the coach get all the blame for them being flat before that? I don't know either. It's probably a mix of all those things. But you probably don't get to 9-0 in Game 7s without being, as so many people have told me, Pete DeBoer is, even on other teams, they've been like, he's a master tactician. He really, when it comes to X's and O's, Pete DeBoer is one of the best you could ask for. He really cares about those things and loves digging into those. And if that gives you just one little extra advantage in Game 7s, then you'll take it every time.
It'll be interesting to see how Winnipeg comes out after that exhausting 2-overtime win on Sunday. Dallas with the extra day of rest. But when you look at the stats, and I know that hits can be deceiving, but going over 70 for a game, this is a very physical Winnipeg team. They can score on you, but they're also going to kind of wear you down over the game. They have some big boys. Lowry specifically, their captain, loves to do whatever it takes to win. So that is something I'm going to be kind of fascinated to see, because I understand regular season, Robert, doesn't translate to postseason, and I'll have my Stars gear on rooting. But man, when I watched those 4 games, Winnipeg had a decided advantage.
Yeah, even the game Dallas won in, I think it was maybe December.
It was the big
they
third
were tied
period.
1-1.
Yeah,
until Mason Marchment had that great backhand goal on Hellebuck. But even that win was a very near thing at home. So I coming into the playoffs, and this pick looked dumb as the round went on and Winnipeg nearly lost. But going into the playoffs, I would have said Winnipeg and Florida are probably most likely your Stanley Cup teams, just because Florida still is just as good as they were last year and seems just as capable to me of mowing down teams the way they were last year. And we all saw what Winnipeg did this year. I mean, we all saw it. They were against Dallas, but against every other team too. They were just consistently excellent in so many categories. Their power play was incredible. Their goaltending was incredible. But their depth also, I mean, they were getting contributions throughout the lineup. It was just one of those, they didn't appear to have a whole lot of weaknesses. So you have to hope that maybe their shakiness against St. Louis, you really have to hope, if you're the Stars, that that's more of what you'll see than what they saw this year in those 4 games head-to-head.
Yeah, and I'm close. I had Winnipeg, Toronto. So you and I are kind of on the same page.
Okay, well, Toronto and Florida, we'll see who makes it out. Toronto's up 1-0, so you could be right.
Yeah, heck of a series. I mean, just these NHL playoffs have just been absolutely amazing. One league-wide question.
Yeah.
Since you do such in-depth coverage, I have mixed emotions, because I'm a physicality guy, but some of these hits and non-suspensions have been interesting. Stolars, I mean, for Toronto to lose their top goalie, that's tough. And for, Hagel to be hit and be out. And it's just, I don't know. I have mixed emotions because I love the physicality of the sport, but at the same time, I just feel as though maybe the league has to treat it more regular season than postseason and kind of tell the guys like, hey, if you do this, you better do it right.
Yeah, Chris Pronger, actually, who used to be with the Department of Player Safety, had a big long thread on Twitter today where he kind of laid out all his thinking about, yes, obviously he's trying to rattle the goalie here with this hit. That's not great. Yeah, it should probably be a penalty. It wasn't called a penalty. Pronger's point was, if there was a penalty called on that play where Bennett gets Stolars with his elbow, if there's a penalty called, even if he's not, kicked out of the game or suspended, if there's a penalty called, it probably lowers the temperature a little bit.
Yeah.
Because at least it highlights,
Sure.
hey, we can't have this. The fact that there was no penalty called, and we just heard this morning there's probably not going to be any supplemental discipline.
Yeah.
That kind of sticks in your craw a little bit more, because seeing a goalie, puking on the bench because of what sure seems like a concussion,
right?
That tells you that, I mean, that's brain damage, right? That's what a concussion is brain damage. And that's not something that, for too long, right? This league and a lot of leagues were too cavalier about that. Pronger's thread is really good because I think he covers kind of a back and forth of, yeah, you want to address these things, but also it's not like Bennett is plowing him, right? He's not at full speed trucking him. He's coming around the corner and obviously like kind of giving him a little bit of a chicken wing, but you've seen worse hits. I don't know. And maybe the puck that hit him, because he took a shot square between the eyes in the mask earlier from, I think, Reinhart. Did Stolars. So maybe that was more the precipitating factor. And then the elbow just, who knows, right? That's the point. But there's so little we know about the brain, even when it is healthy. So
yeah,
yes, I think in a vacuum, I would absolutely agree that probably goalies need to be protected more than they are. And that we err on the side of saying, oh, that's playoff hockey. It's just got to be tough. And when everyone kind of agrees, what Bennett's doing there, it's not a hockey play. It's just not a hockey play. I don't care where he is in the crease or whatever. He knows what he's doing. It's not like he's, I accidentally fell on him, which is a little bit more, something that you see more often. This is he's right there and I'm going to give him a bit of a shot. And, I just think the head needs to be protected better, especially when goalies are so often down lower where their heads are going to be more vulnerable. It just seems silly not to protect them more.
You and David are teaming up for a cool project with D Magazine. Tell us about it. Right after each game, you guys are involved with kind of a post game.
Yeah, it's a series for D Magazine. We did it in the first round too. It's called What We Saw, What It Felt Like, if I have that right. It goes up right after the game, and usually we'll tweet it out, or our editor Mike Palucci, who you've had on too.
Love Mike.
Or he usually tweets it out first because he actually edits it and makes it somewhat legible after I try to scroll it down really quickly. But David's usually much more considered and thoughtful, whereas I'm just trying to spew something out before either heading down to interviews for at least home games. So that usually will go up pretty quickly after the game, or at latest the next morning right afterwards. Right after the game, maybe, especially for those first couple games that are going to be later starts as usual.
Yeah.
That might go up the next game, but it's pretty short. It's not like 4,000 words or anything. It's just a few graphs from me and a few graphs from David about what we saw and what it felt like. So that's always a good, you want an instant kind of read on the game, whether it was a good one or a tough one, in your opinion. That's always going to be there. And then of course I'll have stuff at Stars Thoughts later on the game. But that's a great sort of instant reaction thing that anyone can read.
Yeah, starsthoughts.com. Robert puts up a ton of information, and a reminder, Robert is an independent reporter. We all love him. So any way you can support him, subscribing to starsthoughts.com is very, very appreciative. We got to get another person to step up and give you some tickets so you can raise more for charity.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was super cool.
That was cool.
That was really cool. Well, keep up the good work, my friend.
Yeah.
Big things ahead for you, and awesome that you are doing amazing work this whole playoff campaign. You, Leah, Heika, Castillo, Shapiro. I mean, there are so many people now involved in Stars hockey. It's just grown right in front of us over the past 3 years. So super excited that the Stars are getting their due as far as media coverage.
Yeah, I think it was August or July or something last summer. I wrote a quick piece on the site about how this is in some ways, this is a golden age of Stars media coverage, because, you know, you've obviously been doing this great show for a while. But there have just been so many others who've gotten on board. Not even talking about myself, just other, like some of the names you mentioned. I think Stars fans have more options, probably really, than they've ever had in terms of reading good, thoughtful, considered Stars coverage from local people, local writers, and local radio hosts, radio managers, station owners, executives, bigwigs, whatever you call yourself. It's just, I don't think it's ever been this good in a lot of ways. Even though media has changed, it's always hard to think back to what we have lost in the media landscape. But I think we've also gained a lot, especially this year. So I couldn't agree more.
I do like when, you know, our fan hosts are really talking a lot of hockey, and that's awesome, and having great guests on. I do think it's funny when someone sends me a message and, like your podcast, someone needs to tell the boss at 105.3 The Fan that we need more hockey. So I'm like, yeah, I'll tell him.
I'll tell him. He's a pretty unreasonable guy, but I'll talk to him.
I heard he's a fan.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Gavin.
All right, that's Robert Tiffin, starsthoughts.com. And right after the game, our friend David Castillo and Robert team up for a cool little thing, along with Mike Palucci, D Magazine. So be sure to support D Magazine, because they've done such a great job with Robert and David and Sean, just all kinds of Stars coverage on D Magazine. So that's going to do it for another edition of Spits and Suds as we make our way towards Game 1, Dallas, Winnipeg. We'll keep pumping out these episodes for you. Until then, have a great day, everyone.